So welcome. Let's start your imaginations going right away. Imagine you're sitting at the table with the CEO, the CFO, and a couple other VPs. And you're already feeling a little bit nervous in the meeting because you don't know where it's going. Then suddenly the CEO says, you know what, I've been talking to the board members and they want us really to focus on culture. And so suddenly they turn to you as the HR director and they say, what are your plans for next year for culture? What do you say? What do you do? And I've had a similar experience too. I've been leading an organization for about 20 years as a CEO of a marketing company. And I've been thinking, how do I have a culture that motivates people? What's the one thing? I've been trying to get people to move towards goals and get things done, but I really struggled getting people to do this, to build that culture. So how do we do that? What's the answer that we can give to those people at the desk, around that table? And this is what I want to do in the next hour. I want to inspire you with this one thing that motivates all people that I've discovered because I was inspired to study and to dig deep into this. I've read hundreds of books. I've studied at the University of Pennsylvania. I've studied at MIT, the University of Amsterdam, things like cultural team development, process development for business, quantitative social research, all these different things. Why? Because I'm passionate to find this one thing. And you'll hear from my story. I had bad experiences with culture. I've had the challenge of leading a culture myself. And I wanted to find that one thing that motivates all people, because without it, it was really difficult to shape culture. I've had the privilege of working overseas with over 42 different countries in Europe. I worked with Afghan refugees. I've worked in the United States with people from Wall Street. What motivates the Afghan refugee and the Wall Street mogul in New York, or the consultant in New York who's working on billion-dollar accounts? Is there one thing that motivates both of those types of people across all diversity and in all different cultures? There is. And I'm excited to present that to you, so let's jump right in. And I want this to be an interactive session because we pulled the late slot here, so we need to get jumping here. So the thing that I want you to do is we're going to do a lot of experiments and interactive things to help you discover what the ultimate why is, the one thing that motivates all people. I don't want to just tell you, okay? So you got to participate with me here, even though it's a virtual thing. So, being a researcher, experimenter, we're going to be doing this for the next hour. It's an experiment that I've developed called the pump exercise, where we pretend to be a team of people that are working a pump. Because, what this will do is it'll help you see if you can be motivated and you can motivate yourself for the next hour. Okay, so I'll do different things, like I'll suggest that I'll give you a penny a pump for the next hour and see if that will motivate you. No? Okay, well, let's set a goal for 7,200 pumps. Well, and you know that if you work at 7,200 pumps at this pace, you could make probably about $72,000. I've done the math. You think you could do this for an hour? How about a lifetime? How many people in your workplace actually see work they feel like this is what their work is like? I go into work, I do my favorite work. I go into work, I do whatever it is, whatever machine it is. They just feel like this is work. And this is all I have to do for the rest of my life. And how depressing is that? And there's this huge crisis of disengaged workers that we're going to be exploring here. But what motivates us? Is there one thing that I could get you to do for this work for the rest of your life, to feed your children? Just to get paid? Is that why we're doing it? Well, I've got this special thing here that I can modify. I can actually, if you put your hand on the computer, I can see how motivated you are. So I can see you guys are dropping. Okay, there's a few of you out there that are doing it great. There it went. We're going to have to call HR in, I guess, to fix this, right? So, this kind of work might be boring. Maybe it's the boringness of work. I mean, all those gurus out there that are telling us on the internet, you just have to find that one thing that'll excite you for the rest of your life, and then things will be great. And you'll be able to have a lovely kind of work for the rest. I mean, that feeling, you'll have that feeling for the right. You just have to find, arts and crafts or poetry, or maybe it's pumping for you and sledding for you. So what if we just changed it into something exciting? We kind of gamify this. Let's say, make it into a game. Let's say this is tennis instead of pumping. Maybe that'll motivate us. And so let's do a case study on a guy that got to do that for the rest of his life. I mean, imagine this. Here's Andre Agassi. I mean, he got to be number one in the world. He beat everybody in the Olympics. He won like the US Open, the Australian Open, French Open, the Open. What if it was open, he won it, okay? He crushed everybody. He was number one in the world. And check him out, he's got nice hair to boot, So he was married to Brooke Shields. He was flying high. And then he said this in his autobiography about this period of his life. He says, let me let you in on a dirty little secret. Winning changes nothing. He says, I hate my work. How could a guy have a bank full of money and his own freaking plane and still be depressed and uninvigorated in his work? He started a downward spiral. He started missing games, quitting games, cussing out the ref, throwing his racket. He got kicked out. He finally, he got so bad, he started spiraling out of, he was like, not number one, he was like number 144 or something like that. He was no longer even on the pro circuit. He was playing amateur games, amateur pickup games. And at that point, he started taking methamphetamines. He got divorced. His life was falling apart. Maybe having fun, having thousands of people cheer your name, Andre, is not enough. Millions of dollars, not enough. What could be enough to sustain people over a lifetime? Well, part of my story gets into this, to answering this question, and I'm going to let you in on one of my days. I had hair at some point in time. This is me at 18, rocking the mullet, man, and that cool stash. What? And so, I had a big plan for life at 18. I thought, I was an artist, was really good at that. I thought that might be a cool career, but, painting or in a room by myself, not so much. I was conceiving of something really dreamy and meaningful. I'm serious. I've always been kind of asking the big questions of like, what is the ultimate why? What is the purpose of this? So I wanted to do something, for me, was the deepest, most purposeful thing that I could conceive of at the time, which was missionary work. I wanted to go to a country and change it. I wanted to change people's lives. I wanted to help the poor, fix infrastructure, change lives, man. I didn't want to just paint paintings, which may inspire somebody, but I wanted to do lasting, deep change. Well, similarly, this is my daughter, Ashley. I love Ashley. She came to me, though, one time very distressed. She wasn't happy. She's a college student. And she was saying to me, Dad, she's an artist, too. She's even better than me. She's third generation. My mom's a painter. I'm a painter. She's a painter. And she was going to art school. She crushing it. But she's like, Dad, same thing. I don't think that this is going to fulfill me for the rest of my life. And in fact, she was kind of in tears about it. Like, Dad, I just, because she was listening to all those internet gurus and things like that you just have to find the one thing that you'll love for the rest of your life. She's like, what if I don't love it, Dad? What if I switch majors and then, it's the same deal? I'm just like not feeling good. I don't like it. I wasted all the time getting the major and now I got to pay off the debt and do this for the rest of my life. It's scary, Dad. What do I do? Well, I was able to tell her from my own story, and we'll share a little bit more of that. Well, here's where my story picks up. Again, I'm 20 years old, about the same age as Ashley, and I'm driving down, these streets in a little motor Euro scooter. It's dark. It's back then. All the buses like belched out smog, and all the cars ran on leaded gas. It was a poor country back then. The cars were like 20 years old, and I was driving down the street. I wasn't driving anywhere in particular. I put down my visor, not necessarily to keep the smog out. I was driving down the same street as the first ancient marathoner ran. It's called Marathon Street. And I was running for my life too. That guy ran and he died at the end of his race, the first marathon. And I was dying inside too. I put down that visor, not just to keep out the smog, but to scream. And it was just like that soul scream of like the depth of despair, kind of where my daughter was, only like deeper and darker and blacker. Because I had already picked my career, that mission career, and I thought, this is going to be great. But in about 3 months, I met my manager, the guy that was leading out on the field here, and I was just like screaming, ah! That soul scream. Because I had already picked my major, I had already picked my course, and I already was living it like Ashley was saying, and I was in despair. I'm 20 years old. And the career that I thought would last me a lifetime didn't last 3 months. My soul was screaming mad, screaming in despair. Why? Because the manager that I worked for, the mission was his machine. He wanted to crank out results. We were his cogs. We were his machine, and he fueled it with shame. While we were out feeding the poor, he was shoving shame down my throat and manipulation to not just me, but the entire team. We left devastated from that place. I left devastated. What should have been an ideal culture, an ideal job, caring for people, for crying out loud. We were pushed to do more and more. He slept 3 hours a night, and we couldn't keep up with him, and we never did enough. We didn't raise enough funds. We didn't reach enough people. We didn't stay up late enough. We weren't dedicated enough. In every staff meeting, we heard it. Every interaction, there was a little jibe, a little twist, a push to reach more goals, more goals, more goals. Threw us under the bus in order to get his goals. That leads to this current crisis. What do I tell Ashley? Oh, you'll find a fun job like Andre Agassi. That'll sustain you for the rest of your life. Or just follow your passion like I did. Live your dream, Ashley, like I did. And it'll work out fine. Are these the things that motivate for all life? What do we tell that 30-year-old mom? What do we tell that 20-year-olds, those Gen Zers that are coming to us now? What do we tell that 50-year-old that's been at it for 30 years in work? What's the one thing that motivates them? What are we to do? As HR directors, I know you got into this for the people. I've talked to you. I've done surveys. We've done research. You guys love people, and I know that you're into this. You're full into this. So what's the solution? What do we do? What's the current crisis? And I know a lot of you have probably seen some of these statistics, but we're going to go over it one more time because this is the state of things. I'm going to do a bit of a tug of war. So the tug of war is going to represent work like we did the pump work earlier. So the tug of war is the work. And what is the average? This is the average workforce, has 10 people on it. So we'll use the average of a 10-size team to represent all of the workforce. Okay? So what we're looking at is these first three are the people that are pulling hard. They're the ones that are digging in their heels and they're pulling for the team. And then there's the next 5 on the list out of 10. And they're just being pulled along by the first 3. They're content to just like hang on so that they're not really pulling or getting attention paid to them because they're not pulling. They look like they're pulling. Maybe they're even doing this, but they're not putting any muscle into it. We call those disengaged workers. And you've probably heard that term from Gallup before. So 50% of the workforce is disengaged, just hanging on for the ride. And then there's these last 2 that I call the disgruntled. They're the guys that are like, have fun with this. I'm not doing this. This place sucks. You can't get me to work. When you turn your back, I'm gonna throw a wrench into the thing and go up and down the line and say, well, you shouldn't be pulling. These guys suck. You know what they did to us? You know what they said to him? 2% of the workforce is that. 5% of the 50% of the workforce is that. 70% disengaged. That's a huge statistic. How do we combat that? How do we motivate those people? It's crazy. It's a big task, and that's what's in front of us. That's what Gallup, I think they have a 30 million sample size for that. In terms of statistics, that's spot on. How do we combat that? Your place might not look as bad as this. It might be better or it might be worse. But guaranteed, you've got leaders that are all in these different spectrums that you've got to deal with. You've got to communicate to them what the one thing is that motivates all people. So these are some of the statistics I'm sure you've seen before. I'll just highlight a few. 1 day of work lost per week per employee. That's huge. Higher turnover. That's great for us as HR. 51% actively looking for new work. And look at this, Gen Z, 75% of them have already quit their job because of emotional issues. They've only been in the workplace for like 6 months? That was me though, I quit. They're not so stupid. We think, oh, those kids, maybe they're smarter than we think. Why should they persist being in a place that emotionally is not working? Maybe we need to pay attention, okay? Maybe they're the canary in the coal mine for us. So those are some of the statistics of the current reality. So I started going out and asking people, hey, what's the one thing that motivates all people? And first I just started casually. I'd be sitting on the couch and I go, what do you think is the one thing that motivates all people? What do you think is the one thing that motivates all people? And you can imagine the answers that I got. When I started asking, I'd ask CEOs, I'd ask managers, I'd ask the guy in the block, And so start tossing out answers into the chat. This is virtual me asking you, and go ahead and start putting in the chat what you think the average guy would say, not what the big philosopher would say. What does the average guy say? And what is the one thing that motivates all people? Money. That's the first thing that I usually hear. So, and then, achievement. Those are the guys that are maybe, they want to accomplish something big, okay? And then we have power and control. A lot of people don't say that one, but I see it in business, okay? That's why I include it. I see a lot of people that the whole reason why they're into this is so that they can climb up and get to wherever there is. And that's why they're doing it. So that's the answers I get to this question. And it's interesting because I ask the question and I could see what's happening there. Their left brain starts to calculate and they're going, I'm trying to do the math about what is the one thing that motivates me. And they can't come up with the answer. And, because none of these things motivated me or Andre Agassi or other people. So I decided I needed a question that was going to take this down a different path. It needed to be just one thing. You can't tell me 10 things. I need the quintessential thing that motivates us. What is that one thing? So I can steer my ship towards that one thing. I can steer a culture towards that one thing. And it has to work on all times, not just sometimes. It has to be always on. Okay, so I engineered the question differently, and that makes what makes a good research question is to be that kind of extreme question that causes people to really give you a very detailed answer. So here's the question. If you could choose just one thing for all eternity, what would you choose? So let's do a mind picture here where I open a portal to eternity and sci-fi eternity. Here's the portal, and we can get one thing from this world, and we jump through that eternity portal, and that's all we have to sustain us for the rest of forever. So it really has to be something potent that works. So I re-put up those things. So there's be 4 things on the list. So get ready to put in the chat, after I show you the 4 things, what you would choose. Okay? So here's number 1. You get money, and remember, you only get money alone. You don't get money plus people or plus stuff, just money. Number 2, you can get accomplishments alone. You could save all the whales, build big buildings, but that's all you get, all by itself. Power and control alone. You could keep yourself safe by controlling everything in the world. You could control the universe, everything, but you're alone. Number 4, you'd be surrounded by those who care, love and care for you. Surrounded by those who love and care for you. At this point, when I put this one up, I hear laughter usually in a live audience. People are like, oh yeah, well, that's ridiculous. That one's so much better than all the rest combined. And what are the results? You can start putting your votes into the chat room now. 1, 2, 3, or 4. What would you choose for all eternity? And here are the results I usually see. 95% choose number 4. 95% or more. That's a pretty near statistical universal result. It's pretty amazing, actually. So what is the ultimate why that we've been sort of yearning for? What is the one thing that really motivates all people? It's loving connection. What? Yes. Those healthy, thriving, positive relationships. Those are the fuel. Those are the things that we know that if we took that into eternity, that would keep us going. We could live for that. We could live with that for the rest of our lives. So, and I do this for all levels of life. The CEO, the line worker, the HR directors, and everyone in between. Manufacturing, government workers. It's not like you just have to be a big egghead thinker and you think this. No, this is everybody. Democrats and Republicans. They all agree on this. Loving connection. Everyone is unified on this. This is a huge result. This is something we really need to pay attention to. And try to weave this into how does this work in business culture? How does this work in cultures at large? I've seen, like I said, I've seen Middle Eastern cultures, I've seen African cultures, I've seen Asian cultures, I've seen European cultures. Across the board, I've seen all, and it works in all of these cultures. So it's a near universal thing for all humanity, and it's really cool and really startling. Like this entire audience that's listening to this agrees on this one question. How many questions do you get that everyone agrees on? So it's something we need to pay attention to it. So it's not just something that we agree to in surveys, but you'll see, we'll get into the science of this because that's really what I've geeked out on, because there's a question in my mind, if everybody agrees on this, what's with the 70%? What's with me for most of my lifetime? Not being able to figure out what motivates people? Why did I miss this? Where does the disconnect come? And one of the things is that's cool. It's not just science, but it's also confirmed by a lot of businesses now. So it's not just social science and psychology that's confirming this. It's actual economics and business that's confirming this kind of culture. This guy's name is Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell was the former Intel CEO for a while, but then he retired and he became an executive coach. But he didn't just executive coach anybody. They called him the $1 trillion coach because he did like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos and Eric Schmidt, like all the biggest companies in the world. So over $1 trillion worth of assets were represented by the executives that he coached. He coached to the ultimate why. And the business leaders that he worked with, Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google, he wrote this book. And the book he had a chapter in the book about Bill that he wrote called The Power of Love. And here's the essence of what Bill taught these top-level CEOs. He says you can't separate your personal life from your work life. They're one and the same. You can't ignore your emotional life and this persona that you bring to work. You have to be real. You have to embrace the whole person with love. In that chapter, these top-level CEOs saw this guy live this out. He treated everyone with dignity. He loved everyone. In fact, there's a story like he's teaching little kids football on the field. And he gets a call from Steve Jobs, and he shows the kids, like, look, Steve Jobs is calling me up. And he's like, bloop, send a voicemail. Because he was present with those kids. They meant something to him. And it wasn't just that. He would greet everybody with a smile, a hug, a joke. He lived it out. And he taught these leaders that you need to lead with love. It was his quintessential characteristic that these leaders wanted you to know. So it's not just leaders like him, but it's people like Bob Chapman from Barry Waymiller in St. Louis, a $3 billion company. Everybody matters in his books. Treating people with love, that's the only way. It's the thing that led his companies to success, creating a culture around that. So it's not just the science, but it's the business science as well that's been bearing this out. And I'd like to think of us right now, I'm going to dive into the science, because that's the other thing that's a problem, is a lot of times these CEOs, when I ask them, they're the ones that say, when given the 4 questions, they'll still say love and connection. And then I say, but then they start to think, bringing it into the workplace though, that sounds risky. Well, is it? Well, let's look at this. We're kind of at this crossroads now, and I present this because this is a decision time for you guys as HR directors. There's this old paradigm, and old science actually, called behaviorism. And a lot of management was based on this. You know, the management that was taught to a lot of us Gen Xers and Boomers was based on this, which was based on getting people to jump through hoops. And we'll talk more about that. But there's another pathway that was started about the same time that actually is called attachment. And more of the new science, the social science, the psychology is based on this, that the fundamental wiring of human beings is based on loving connection. Healthy human relationships. That's what creates our values. That's what motivates us to act. And when we don't have it, we start to turn into that 70% that doesn't thrive. Wow. Okay, so let's dig into the wrong pathway first, because I want to empower you so that when you sit at that table with other executives and they say, why should we go down this path of culture? You'll have the tools and the knowledge on how to describe it for them, all right? So we're going to rip through this really fast. Okay? So behaviorism, reward punishment. It was built on animal training. You know, dogs, they studied dogs and look, we train them to do this and they do it. Wow. It ignored emotions, obviously, because animals don't have many emotions. And lo and behold, it works on people too, but it works temporarily. People like DC and some other top social scientists who have studied this, Paul Marciano from Yale, he says, yeah, this stuff works, but it works temporarily and it has side effects. So what are some of the side effects? It needs ever-increasing stimulus. If you pay somebody $20 to jump through the hoop, they're not going to jump for $20 again. And the problem is it destroys teamwork. Well, you paid him $20. What about me? You gave him special reward. How come I don't get mine? Where's our special reward? You know, when you do things like you motivate kids to read books by paying them money, they don't have the intrinsic motivator. All these things are external. And what is more, we'll dive into it. What does it do to our brains? What's going on in there? Let's crack that open. Well, Dr. Robert Lustig, this guy here, cracked that open in his book called The Hacking of the American Mind. Okay? He says this is kind of like leadership by hacking. So we're taking a shortcut in our brains. We're hacking our brains by this neurotransmitter called dopamine. And yeah, dopamine makes you happy. It's like the, whoo, I went through the hoop, I got the $20. $20! And you use power over people to create these things, okay? And people have been creating them. I mean, think about it. It's like material rewards, and even it's like psychological rewards, like finding something new. Like, think about it. All of our food, he said, is engineered to hack our dopamine responses, like dong, and we have to have more and buy more. And our electronics are all hacked with that, so that we have to, just one more swipe, one more pull. Look, something new, dopamine, happy. And like my friend was telling me, she saw a 2-year-old girl who was just like mesmerized by the little machine giving dopamine. And she just looked up at her with this dead glaze. Like, what are we doing? We're hacking our minds. And we've even imported this into management. We set up a goal, then we tell them what the rewards are, and then we tell them what the punishments are. What is that? It's operant classical conditioning. Okay, and that's what management has been based on. And early management said, keep that emotional person out of the office. Leave it at home. It doesn't belong here. Well, it turns out that those emotions are pretty critical to and fundamental to our wiring as human beings. And happiness in this way is just a hack. And we know that. That's why none of you, more than 95% of you, didn't choose one of those hacks to take it with you onto the other side for eternity, because you know that this doesn't work. Fundamentally, we've experienced this as human beings. Status and rewards, material rewards, that doesn't work. It's the molecule of want. Dopamine, just the problem with it is this, it downregulates, okay? So what does it do? So the body doesn't want you to like OD on things. It's supposed to, dopamine's supposed to get you somewhere, and then you're supposed to go, okay, I did it, done. So then it downregulates, so you don't try to keep doing it over and over again. That would put the brain in loops. So it downregulates it. The next time you do something that gave you pleasure already, it downregulates it. That cup of coffee the first time is, amazing. The next time, it's good, but it wasn't like, the first time, okay? So it downregulates so that we don't overdose in our heads, but it's designed for short-term motivation, and behaviorists use it to motivate. And it's kind of like Sisyphus, the endlessly chasing up. And you know, this guy, Paul Marciano, who wrote this book, Carrots and Sticks, you know, the carrot is the reward and the stick is the punishment. It just doesn't work. Yeah, it does work temporarily. And that's the kind of the deceptor, because this works really fast in our brains, faster than the other pathway that we'll talk about. So it acts really fast, and it works temporarily, and the managers go, ding, it works. But it doesn't work. But think about it. This is the same pathway as addicts go down. And that's a classic thing. So cocaine, you take some, and your body gets flooded with dopamine, but it needs more and more and more and more to stimulate that same amount of dopamine that the first hit took. So that's why addicts go in that downward spiral of addiction to the point where they almost overdose or die. And they give up on all else to just find that one thing. Once you start this vicious cycle, it's really hard for us to get off of it. So using this as a management technique is devastating. Its side effects are, you know, you'll either get people that can't stop, the workaholics, or the people that give up. Like, been there, done that. And that's where 70% of the people are. They've been there, done that. So it's a tragic way to do this. And what is more, it also releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Like, people who are in a fight or flight, like either I need to run away from the punishment or run like crap to chase something, it causes illness. 42% of absences are caused by mental illnesses in the workplace. And then we got what we call presenteeism. It's worse than absenteeism by 1.5. They're the guys that are hanging on the roof, just sitting there, pretending to work, you know, looking at Facebook half the time, or just working extra slow. That's worse. It's chronic. And then this scientist said it all. He summed it up. I can't get no satisfaction, though I try and I try and I try. Dr. Mick Jagger. And he kind of intones what the pursuit of dopamine is. It doesn't go anywhere. It leaves you empty. And that's the way we've been managing. And a lot of times this is the way we've been creating culture. Maybe not completely, but there's so much of this in our culture creation that it's devastating our workforce. And we need to be aware of that. And we need to be able to tell our C-level people, like, this is what we're creating. We're creating this pathway with behaviorism and rewards, and we're ignoring the true human being. So let's take the other path. Let's see where that leads us. The new attachment path. And attachment is the study of people, and it was discovered by John Bowlby in the 50s. And his theory was different. It wasn't about reward and punishment. It was fundamental wiring based on caring parents. And when those caring parents were there, that child took off and was connected. Because back in the 50s, they would put a child with a disease into a hospital and rip his parents away. And he saw that with devastating effect because that's where he was working as a doctor. So he started studying those kids and said, these kids didn't fare well. These kids with the connected parents fared well. And then he started doing more formal studies, and it bore out again and again in studies that this is our fundamental wiring. It's not, yeah, you can work with human beings with stimulus and response, but that's not what wires us. We're wired as human beings for caring relationships. And it's not just children. It's these studies have gone further. It's in adults. Think about teenagers. When they're left alone, do they thrive? Do they try to be like the people around them? Oh, yeah. Do they want to be connected? Oh, yeah. This is their first steps into adulthood. They're desperate for connection. And then when we become adults, it persists. We need it. We need that connection, and we need to give that connection to others. And when we don't have it, we get what we have today is this epidemic of loneliness and despair that's going on because of a lack of connection, a lack of understanding that this is our fundamental need. This is the thing that will help our culture and help our society more than anything else. And they've done specific studies on how the attachment works out in work leaders. And that's one of the things that was happening to me in Greece. It's like I was really motivated to do the job. It was like lousy pay, leave your country, leave your family. I was willing to do it. But that leader, he was supposed to be my attachment figure. I had good relationships with the friends that were there, and that was great. But this guy, it's kind of like because he was the attachment figure, he ruined everything for not just me, but most of my friends that were there. We all left in kind of a despairing place. So That attachment figure as an adult and as a leader is critical, okay, according to studies. And this is the science of relationship as being the foundation for human beings. And it is the prevailing paradigm, okay? Okay, we're going to pop open the brain again and see why this works. Why does this work? What's going on? Well, it's this lovely stuff called serotonin that gets released when we're in relationship with others. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter like dopamine, but it causes a different effect. It causes happiness again, but maybe a few seconds longer. It takes a few seconds longer than dopamine and cortisol to take effect. But when it takes effect, it has this contentment effect. That's why you chose it for all eternity, because you know that satisfaction effect that loving connection has. It's like, yeah, I feel happy, and it keeps working. It doesn't disappear. That's the beauty of this. And there's this longevity study that Harvard did from 1938 until now. It's one of the longest long-term studies that's ever been done scientifically. And they followed individual graduates from Harvard over the years, over the decades, and guess what they found? Yeah, loving connection. Those that had healthy, thriving, interactive relationships over time, they're the ones that were healthy, their businesses were doing well, their finances were doing well, their families were doing well. They were reporting high levels of wellness. And the people that chose to pursue careers and power and money, they tanked. So it's like they just tested those two paths out right there. The people who took the right path of attachment, and not only did their relationships go well, but all the other things were indicators after the fact that this individual is thriving because they have good relationships. The good relationships, the leading indicator. The trailing indications were good business, good health, good all these other things. In fact, loneliness is more deadly than smoking cigarettes. It's more deadly than taking drugs. It's probably the number one health effect according to the Surgeon General of the United States. He wrote a book about connection being really important. So we need to listen to this science. And this isn't just a couple of woo science on the side. This is the major paradigmatic shift in social science and psychology, that it's all about loving connection. Okay? And if you want to motivate human beings, we got to get on this train and start to follow this. So, here's the other great thing that gets released, oxytocin. Okay? Oxytocin, according to Paul Zak, he's an economist rather, and he's thinking, he's trying to study what makes economies work, what makes all these great things work in business. Well, he found that it's oxytocin. When does it get released? When you're in a healthy, connected relationship. Okay? So it's the foundation for business and trust. And he says this, there's no shortcuts, no substitutes. Success is great, but no amount of money, achievement, or fame will satisfy the need for human attachment. And then we get it as a bonus, endocannabinoids and endogenous opioids. And the body goes into go. It's like all of these feel-good hormones get released. Your body gets primed for living and working. It tells your body it's time to go. It's time to live. Things are good. That's why it works. That's why the science is going in this direction. So let's do a case study in business. Okay, I've told you the geeky science stuff. Let's do a business case study. Southwest Airlines. Okay, and this is the prime case because they're not just like one of those unicorn ideas. They came out with a brilliant idea that nobody had. No, they came out with an idea that everybody had. Airline. Okay, and they came out with a lame idea because they couldn't compete. They wouldn't. The big airlines wouldn't let them into the hubs to compete with them. They're not dumb. So they took all these little airports and they started connecting the dots between these little airports. And so it was a business model that was 20% less efficient, and still is, than the major hub-to-spoke model. They had less capitalization, and they had to do things faster. So they had to be more efficient with their teams than any of the other airlines. They had to cut their prices too. So they're at an economic disadvantage in every single way. So if they win this journey, it has to be one other factor. What is the one other factor that they have? This little heart that they have painted on every plane. It's not just painted on every plane. It's the lifeblood of their culture. Okay? According to their CEO, according to their chairman, and according to their top leadership, loving connection is a critical element of their culture. Okay? So let's see what the results are after 50 years of doing this kind of business experiment, with loving connection being the front-running factor, what did they do? Let's see. They had 50 years of profitability. And that's in an industry that has posted a net loss over those same 50 years. They are the only one that has posted a 50-year profitability every year. Profitability. More stock value than all the others combined. More productive employees than all other teams combined. All of the airlines, they have the most productive employees. The lowest turnovers. They have no layoffs. I mean, even during this time of COVID, they came out and said, we pledge to do our best to do no layoffs. And I don't think they have yet. Highest safety record, the highest satisfaction of any airlines, and the largest airlines in the US, and almost the largest airlines in the world in just 50 years. That's some amazing results. And you think, okay, well, maybe it was some other factor. Well, let's hear from their CEO, what he had to say about this. This is the former CEO, Herb Kelleher. He's now passed away. But this is what he had to say about his 50 years in the helm of Southwest Airlines. For those who think leading with love is just simply soft management, review the record of Southwest Airlines. Over the last 50 years, from these results, it can factually and logically be concluded that if you seek a long and continued success for your business organization, treat your people as family and lead with love. Wow. Well, maybe it's just this one unique airlines. Maybe it's just them. Well, this is a survey by Gallup of millions of organizations. I think it's like 18 million workers, 30,000 different businesses, 70 odd countries. This is what they find broad spectrum. Lower turnover, fewer safety incidents, fewer product defects, higher productivity, higher profits, 11% higher stock valuations. So yeah, you can get stuff done on the old pathway, but this is far more productive. So if you want to be competing, here's where to compete and win. It's this factor. And the funny thing is you can't try to win by pursuing profits with this as a technique. You have to pursue this first. This is the one thing that motivates people. You put your culture around this, and then the people start thriving. You put those people together, the culture starts thriving. It's simple math, okay? So we're going to go on from here, and we've got 15 minutes. We're going to book through the rest of this. Because, loving connection, that's a huge thing. So how do I make that, Randall? What do I need to present? It starts with leaders, and leaders lead by attachment. So I'm going to throw out some real quick exercises here because we don't have much time. Okay, so make a mental list of those closest to you and those most distant from you. So a close person, like a family member, a friend, and then you need an acquaintance and maybe an enemy. Who would do anything for you in that grouping? Okay, think about that. And who would be reluctant to do things? Who would you be reluctant to do things for? Okay, so this little chart looks like this graphically. And we'll just get these people on the screen here. And you've got people that are close to you. Those are like maybe your family and your closest friends. There's this relationship of you do anything for each other almost without doesn't need to be compulsion. Just ask. I'll do it. In fact, I'd be happy to do things for you. And you'd be happy to do things for me. And same with friends. It's pretty tight. Acquaintances, maybe it's just on a nice level. Yeah, if you ask, and I have time. But then you get out here to this disengaged, disconnected relationships, and they ask you to do things you don't really want to. Our motivation dissipates as the attachment dissipates. So leadership is a product of attachment. Leadership isn't not a product of power, because I know that I have people out here who have the power over me, like that guy in Greece, and other people I've worked for. They had power over me to tell me to do things, but I was unmotivated. I had to really work hard to do what they wanted me to do. Okay? So that's the principle number one. Leadership is based on attachment. It's not based on power and control. Okay? Gordon Neufeld, PhD. We are instinctively hardwired to follow people that are attached to us. Not science. So, how do we break down love into scientific categories? That's been my quest. Not because I wanted to geek out on it, but because I wanted to be able to communicate this to people. And we have to fly through this in 5 minutes each. And these I love to expand with exercises so that people are interacting. We'll try to get a few of those in there so you get a flavor of it, okay? But so here are the three sciences. Personality science. Do I feel known and engaged with? Known and understood. That's the number one thing that we all want. It's a universal thing. That's part of love. Okay. Emotional science. I want to be emotionally engaged. That's the artistry of this. Okay. When I do this well, the artistry is I feel emotionally engaged with you. Okay, and that's connected to the ultimate why as well. And then values science. What promises am I keeping? Am I going to be there for you in the long run? And am I acting out of the deepest me? So these three combined are what make the ultimate why work. Okay, and there's a science side of it, and there's this artistic side. When you do it really well, you're like a virtuoso, and people are like, they just follow you. Okay. And your culture just starts to gel when it becomes that art and not just a science that you have to do by rote. Okay? So let's dive into it real quick, all right? Personality science. So it's our longing to be known and understood. It creates an awareness and an engagement. Okay, so here's some of the things that we need to engage with. Traits, strengths, learning styles. So what this does is when I know somebody really well, I can predict what they want. So being able to predict is huge by knowing this. Okay, so introverts, type the word me into the chat column now. Question for you introverts. And interestingly, as I do surveys of HR people, 65% of HR personnel are introverts. You wouldn't have thunk. You would think they're all extroverts, but they're not. Okay, introverts, do most extroverts know how you like to be treated? So type that answer in the chat out there. And guess what I hear from those introverts, extroverts? No! I hear about like 80% of the introverts are like, what do you mean? They don't understand us at all. So there's a whole huge segment of the population that don't feel understood by us extroverts because we haven't studied their personality trait, how they like to be treated. We just treat them like they're broken extroverts, really. And these are some of the most productive, best people you have on your team, for sure. And so does that hinder them treating well? Sure thing, it does. Here's another exercise that we do, and I'll just show this to you real quickly. But this is a lot of fun. This is what your leaders should be able to do. They should be able to look at these three people and immediately go, this guy is going to need to be called out in a conversation because look, he's internal, introverted, strategic, see, and he's English. So we're going to need to, when he says something, we need to at least listen and call out his talk. This guy, he's an external, he's an I on the DISC test, he's a connection on the strength test, he's Greek. He's going to be talking all the time. He's going to be exciting, but you're going to have to tell him to tone it down sometime and listen to Tommy in a conversation. Then Tess, she's probably going to be the leader of the team. Okay? So all of those things, your leadership teams need to be able to slice and dice that really quick. You know, in the personality things, they need to just go, this personality is going to work out like this, and be able to predict where they're going to thrive more, they won't. So this is predicting traits, predicting communication styles, predicting strengths. You're going to have to get this with the slides after the fact because we can't go through this. But there's a lot here in this particular corner of science, personality science. Dig in. Some of this you're doing already. Keep doing it because this is the first step. The first step. The next one is emotional science. This is the big kahuna. Okay, this is the hardest to master, and this is where most of our cultures get stuck. Because remember, we're told to check those emotions outside. And there's a reason, because they're hard to do. And I think it's more like the managers are like, that's crap and hard. I don't want to have to deal with that. The biggest conflicts is when we have two of us conflict over the same thing. There's a product launch. One of us does, the workers are like, crap, we're going to have to work weekends to get that done. The leadership is like, if I get this done, I'll get a reward. So you have two varying emotional responses to the same event. And then we don't know how to handle that. That's what happened with my leader in Greece. He's 50 years old. He actually went out and faced cannibals in Irian Jaya when he was a kid. But he couldn't have a conversation with a 20-year-old about workflow because we had varying emotional perspectives on it. And he had to shut it down with shame and manipulation and control and power. Done. And then I was like, wait, what? Emotions are the combination of thinking and somatic feeling. So we don't often have conversations about the emotions that we have, the thoughtful emotions like, hey, that product launch is going to make me feel like the pace makes you feel like that you don't really care for me as human beings and what my family is going to look like as a result. That's an emotional conversation about thoughts. Or we don't really, how often do you hear in the workplace, hey, I feel triggered right now and I'm not really all that relational. So this discussion, if we can do it in 20 minutes when I have a chance to like reboot, calm down a little bit, I know I'll give you more honoring responses than that I can right now, because I'm like, my mind is blown. My body is like shut off. And my responses to you wouldn't be healthy. Can you give me 20 minutes so I can respect your conversation better? When was the last time you heard that? This is where your leadership has to get to, okay? So we need to develop psychological flexibility, okay? Psychological flexibility is the ability to have an emotion but not be captured by it. So let's just do this exercise real quick to give you an example. Okay, so put your hands like this and pretend like fear is written on there. You just got an email from your boss saying, meet me in my office right now, there's a problem. Fear. What if the fear is up here like this? You can't see, and you tend to be reactive. Okay, so you just react and you go, oh crap, I'm going to come in with my guns blazing into that meeting. What if you could gain perspective on that? What if that fear was still a part of you, but it moved away from your face where you couldn't see anything to, oh, I can feel my heart beating. I need to calm that down. Oh, I'm having all these thoughts that are telling me that he's gonna be super angry with me and things are gonna be horrible. But those are just thoughts. Maybe it's something different. And now I can see, and I can see my options. I can say, but what's it like me to do? What are my values? No matter what, I would be candid. I'd have integrity. I would own any mistakes I made. I would work to correct them. And now I go in with that kind of an attitude instead of just freaking out. Psychological flexibility. This is done by Steve Hayes, rather. He's the founder. It was founded over 30 years ago. It's called ACT. And it's learning how to pivot from an emotional situation into acting in values. And we'll talk about values in about 2 seconds with about 2 seconds of time. There's literally thousands of studies that have been done in the last 30 years of how this helps in the workplace. So we just did these exercises, bar one, but there's lots of exercises, and this is a lot of fun because it's a lot of mindfulness-based work that we do and some cognitive work that we do. It helps people to get a handle on their emotional world, and it gives people a leg up. So if you have time to look into ACT for the workplace, do. It's a great way to build culture in this level of science. So we move from personality science, and these kind of move from left to right. There's a whole thinking behind this. You move into emotional science, and once you get past the emotional world, you can move into values-based science. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where we really want to live. And I like this statement. When values become our vision, we become unstoppable. It's true. All values come from loving connection, because it's about valuing human things that humans value. Real quick, goals versus values. Okay, a goal is a temporary point along a line. It's a fixed point. Like when we get to that goal, we stop. We made it, and maybe we feel a little bit of dopamine because we realized a goal. But a value is a fixed point on the horizon. Like you never reach integrity. You just keep doing it forever. It's another reason why this works forever. Okay, creativity, beauty. Do you ever get to beauty? Maybe you reach it at points, but you want to keep experiencing awe, wonder. Those are things that we can continue to create and follow for the rest of our lives, for all eternity. Can your team leaders identify their values? Can they tie their goals and actions to their values? We do all sorts of exercises around this too to help them tease out what their values are, because most people have never even thought about it. Just a few people have thought about it in the C-suite and put a few values on the walls, but the individual, the team, have they done it on that level? And without doing it, you don't know where you're going. You don't have a North Star, something that's beyond goals, that pulls you through the goals and keeps you going. So there's this is all based on Viktor Frankl. He's a very exciting author. He's the guy that wrote Man's Search for Meaning, one of the top 10 books that have ever been written, according to some. These are the three values categories: creative values, what we create for others; experiential values, what do you want to experience from life? I want to experience beauty. I want to experience wonder. And what is your attitude towards life? When life gets hard, what's your attitude going to be? What are you going to bring? And when you bring that attitude towards suffering, it dignifies life, it dignifies suffering, it dignifies everything. And work is hard. So having attitudinal values, critical. Okay? Whew. Wish we could dig into this because this stuff is just like meaty, okay? But I can only give you a taste of it because we only have a few minutes. So here's Viktor Frankl. He was in the World War II concentration camps. They took his family away. He had his manuscript for his book. Remember, it's only handwritten at that point in time. They took it away, burned it. No work, no life, no kids, no family. But this is what he learned because he took the attitude of life is worth it towards suffering. He said, for the first time in my life, I saw the truth as is set into song by so many poets, proclaimed as the final wisdom by so many thinkers, that truth, that love is the ultimate highest goal to which man can aspire. And then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret that human poetry and human thought and belief have to impart. The salvation of man is through love, and in love, the pursuit of the highest values, the ultimate why. Okay? And as we draw to a close of these three sciences that we pursue, let's let that echo in our minds, the words of Viktor Frankl, that this isn't just science. We want to be artists like that people write books about after we die and say, that woman lived. And they follow her direction. Not just her, but how she lived, the values that she had, the art of the ultimate why. Okay, so Andre Agassi got a hold of this. He understood that if he played for something other than himself, other than just the goal of winning, he started realizing he was playing for his fans. He was giving them a gift. And even though his knees were hurting, he kept playing. And he returned to the number one slot. And he used that money to start a school for unfortunate kids in his city. He was playing for them. He was playing for his son. He said, son, he wrote him a note one time. He said, don't ever forget that I'm not playing this game just to win. I'm playing it for you. I'm playing it so people can enjoy the game. I'm playing it for these kids. Don't ever forget that caring is the best thing in life. He said that to his son. Totally changed his life. My daughter Ashley, I was able to tell her, hey, it's not what circumstances bring to you, it's what you bring to circumstances that will change your life. When you bring love to the world, you will inspire yourself and everyone around you. And now she's in the Missouri National Guard because she wants to serve veterans. She's studying to be a licensed clinical social worker. Amazing. And I'm going to leave you with this story from some Southwest Airlines. All right? There's a letter that I hope that all of us and all of our leaders reach the art of the ultimate why, not just the science of it. And this is what the art of it looks like. This is a letter to Southwest Airlines. Dear Southwest Airlines, I'm writing to comment gratefully acknowledge the fine service that my husband and I received recently on one of your planes. My husband returned to Norfolk, Virginia after being deployed in Iraq for 1 year. Our flight home from Baltimore to Long Island was the last leg of a long journey for him. The flight became an unforgettable memory for us all. Your employee, the flight attendant named Sandra, I'll lead her, took the time and the effort to not only thank my husband for his service, but asked everyone on the plane to do the same before exiting and by allowing us to get off the plane first. As we began to exit, the passengers clapped, thanked, and congratulated us. We both began crying during Sandra's detailed announcement about my husband's service and our life together, and the continued crying as we made our way up the aisle of the plane. It was such a relief to finally believe that someone appreciated the sacrifices we and our children had made, as touched as we were by what went on inside the plane. We were floored to find that your employees on the ground were waiting outside the plane to present my husband with a bottle of champagne as well as their thanks. And I was extremely touched when one of the Southwest employees turned to me and said, "Let me also thank you for what must have been a difficult year." As we entered the gate area, every person in the gate to depart stood and applauded. Oh man, they never knew. Based solely on the actions of Sandra. Please extend our greatest appreciation for Sandra's creation of our treasured memory, which will last a lifetime. Lead with Love, by the chairman of Southwest Airlines. So I hope this inspired you to lead with love and to start creating cultures and to give you just a few tools, a taste of what it could be like to begin training leaders, shaping culture around the ultimate why of loving connection. So if you've got questions now, I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and type them in the comment section there, the chat section, and I'll stay around and I'll answer those questions for you. I'd love to keep connecting with you. I'd love to send you our workbook so that you can start digging into this, because I'm passionate about this. I want people to be able to change cultures, because it affects people, it affects lives. So go to theultimatewhy.com/go and we'll continue the dialogue offline. Thanks so much, and God bless.